there are, 15 or 20 of these specialized Homeland Security programs, but there's a vast range of ways the national security industry is infiltrating schools and young people's spaces.
I want to turn back to your specific experience and research within Milton High School. How did you view gender and race and the kind of culture of white supremacy and masculinity that manifested within the classroom in this program? Because we know that, for example, military is a very masculinized institution. Did you see those frames and lenses, within the classroom as well?
Yes, there was a lot of male bravado, a lot of masculinist jokes, just sort of that masculinist patriarchal culture that was really evoked. I remember at the State Police Academy, there was at the end of, students had just eaten at the end of the day, and there was this very hard obstacle course that students wanted to compete in against each other to try to get the fastest time. And at the end, there's just a pile of students who are sick to their stomachs at the end, but wanting to keep pursuing getting the best time. And so that's sort of the male bravado in the classroom and on field trips of sort of, that be all you can be, sort of militarized sort of sentiment that was infused through the classroom. It was a lot of war, aggression, sort of this just brute force sort of sentiment that was infused throughout the curriculum, whether teachers knew it or not. There was a lot of objectifying of girls throughout the time, and boys really articulating these warrior dreams, these desires to become warriors who would advance the global war on terror, who would advance national security. And so that certainly was an organizing theme of the Homeland Security program that was in the classroom, that was in the curriculum, it was in field trips. There was a Department of Homeland Security official was giving a presentation, and she said something like, there's just something about a man with a gun. So ultimate masculinity here is typified by a man wielding a gun. And so these are just the small ways that the sense of masculinity was driven into the program.
So romanticizing war, romanticizing violence. But the flip side of that, of course, is fear. The name of your book is The Curriculum of Fear. How much sort of the fear of the other was manifested within these classrooms through this curriculum? And how did that fit within the fact that, as you mentioned, a lot of these were kids of color who are often seen as other within our society themselves?
Yes, it's quite a project to convince kids of color to fear other kids of color in their own community. And I think this is one of the most brilliant aspects of the program. And it sort of walked this contradiction. And I talk about this in the book, where you have kids who will say, I understand that our understanding of a terrorist is really racist and based on stereotypes. And we don't do that here. We acknowledge that anyone in the world can be a terrorist. Anyone can commit acts of terrorism. And this was really something that every student communicated to me in some kind of way. Anyone can be a terrorist. Anyone can be a terrorist. We don't stereotype. And yet, in the day-to-day classroom, they're talking about kids in Afghanistan who are back in the Stone Ages, who've been at war with each other since they've been children and know no other life. They're talking about how Al-Qaeda hates the United States. And so they're certainly provoking particular fears around a racialized other, while believing and articulating that they're not doing that very thing. And so this is one way that kids of color learn to police other kids of color, through the continued articulation and repetition that this is not what we're doing. We're using objective methods, statistics to assess and measure who is a terrorist and where the threats are and how to respond to those threats.
Now, Nicole, of course, the most disturbing aspect of all of this is that we're talking about kids here. Kids who are obviously easily influenced, still forming their opinions about the world, don't have enough experience to properly judge or assess what somebody is telling them. And as you said, you yourself felt yourself getting caught up in some of your language and culture of Homeland